forgot to mention about, can you tell us the problems with the Old Testament, why the Old Testament books like the book of Genesis, Exodus, and, the Kings and all that, the patriarchal stories, and the David and Solomon story, and why the Old Testament in general is not historically reliable, and things like that. Because fundamentalists will say, yeah, there's archaeological diggings proving the Old Testament, so,
Well, there's some of it is so obviously mythic, like Adam and Eve and Noah and the Ark, that you really, I don't know how people can defend that as history with a straight face. That's just, I remember one Southern Baptist guy, a seminary administrator, said something like, I don't know how a man can be in the ministry if he doesn't believe in a literal Adam and Eve. And I thought, I don't know how you can not be in the insane asylum if you do. It just doesn't work, and it's pathetic to see people try to rationalize it and harmonize it with paleontology. My friend Ed Suomen and I wrote a book called Evolving Out of Eden, Christian Responses to Evolution, and we deal with all that stuff, not just the raw fundies with the creationism, but the theistic evolutionists who are more sophisticated and try to put a good face on it. Forget it doesn't work. But so that stuff's obviously myth, and don't get me started on Noah's Ark, the absurdities of that. But of course, a lot of the Old Testament is not like that, and it's apparent history with Joshua and David. I mean, people have visions of God, but of course people still do, whatever it is. Hallucinations, I don't know, but that's not implausible. But the problem is that you're reading anecdotes of what happens to individuals in private that nobody would have known to pass on. David said this, Bathsheba said that, Abraham said this, Sarah answered that. Who could have kept these private conversations alive in memory? It's just ridiculous. As Hermann Gunkel once pointed out, you're telling me that Israelites were in Egypt for 4 centuries and nothing is recorded about what happened, but with Abraham and Sarah, who allegedly lived before then, we actually hear the dialogue they had over whether or not to kick out Hagar. It's absurd. It's novelistic, and that's one of the big differences between fiction writing and history, and it's obviously novelistic. So that's a huge problem, but maybe the death blow is this archaeology thing. William F. Albright, who was a Presbyterian and trying to prove that the Bible was essentially historical, he played a kind of pin the tail on the Bible game. He and his students would do archaeological digs, and if they found something that might have been a biblical location, okay, that's what it is. There's the ruins of a city under the Dead Sea, gotta be Sodom and Gomorrah. Without any real evidence. I mean, occasionally they actually have found one of these towns with its name on something, but on the whole, no. And they just, this ought to be this ought to be that. Like Constantine's mother sending people to the Holy Land to find the true tomb of Jesus, the true cross, and all this stuff. How could you possibly tell after 300 years? Oh, they couldn't, and they didn't. They just, here's a tomb, I guess this was it. And that's why there's more than one Golgotha, more than one tomb and all that. That's what Albright was essentially doing, and that's why apologists felt entitled to say the Bible's historicity had been vindicated by archaeology, but it hadn't. And now the methodology is different. Those assumptions are not there, and so today's archaeologists have rendered just the opposite verdict. Like, there was no great city of Jerusalem. There was no royal palace of David. There was no temple of Solomon, because you can tell whether there would be ruins, and there are not. And what happened? Did God send angels down with vacuum cleaners as if they were cleaning up a ticker tape parade on a city street? It's just ridiculous. There can't have been such a thing. There was no no exodus because we have the technology through infrared detection to uncover old caravan routes through the Sinai Desert, but there is no sign of an exodus from Egypt, no matter which hypothetical route you pick. A transition of millions of people and huge herds of cattle, no evidence. There'd be loads of evidence if it happened. It simply didn't. There was no conquest of Canaan. You would find all kinds of ruined cities. You don't. It just didn't happen. And so archaeology has put Christians in the same boat it has Mormons, because there are all kinds of statements about Nephite and Lamanite cities and armor and so on. Where? Like, there's no vestige of it. And so and of course they were really finished off by genetic testing that showed that American Indians have no Semitic or Near Eastern genes. So much for that. I mean, that blows the whole thing out of the water. And so that's like Solomon may have been based on Alexander the Great. He has a great empire. He dies, and it's divided into more than one kingdom after he does. Who knows? But it looks like the Old Testament may be written much, much later than we thought, in maybe not just a century before the New Testament. It's shocking, the re-examinations that are going on.
So there's no way. There's no way to prove that, Adam, Eve, David, Abraham, Isaac, Ishmael, all those Old Testament figures, those major ones, David, Solomon, and those minor ones like what's his name, Joshua and Amos and all those people, Daniel. There's no way to prove those people existed, or were they real people but put in fictional stories?
Well, it could be the latter, and with later characters like some of the kings of Israel, like Jehoshaphat and Ahaz and Omri, another version of the name Omar, interestingly. These guys do seem to have existed, and they did have a kingdom called Israel. There are extra biblical monuments that show that, but these great heroes and culture heroes and founders and all that, the problem is that if you take away the temple, what have you got left to say about Solomon? He's the great builder and all of that. If there weren't even enough people in the southern area to have a kingdom, what happens to the story of David doing a census to see how many military men he can have? It just presupposes a much later anachronistic setting. So some will try to distill some vestige and say, well, maybe there was some sort of a bandit chief that David was based on, which is exactly what they do with King Arthur. They say, well, maybe in the 6th century there was a Romano-British war chief named Arthur. Not that there's any real reason to think so. They're just saying it's like there must have been a Clark Kent. Niels Peter Lemke says these are just rationalizing paraphrases. They're trying to just give you a cloudy view of the story and get rid of all the stuff that is obviously mythic and say, well, maybe the rest of it's true. There's just no reason to do that. Any document, as David Friedrich Strauss said, is as reliable as its most unreliable feature. That if it's saying this kind of crazy thing, forget it. Whatever else it says incidentally is not to be taken seriously either.
Oh, okay, because Islam doesn't accept the Bible anyway, so I don't have any problems criticizing the Bible.
What about the people of the book thing, and that Jesus brought the Injil, David, the Psalms, and so on?
According to Islam, Jesus brought the Gospel, not the New Testament. But the Gospel is not the New Testament. The Gospel is some kind of revelation given to Jesus, not necessarily written, not necessarily a written form, but maybe like an oral message or something like that. So that's the gospel of Jesus, but the gospel of Jesus is not the New Testament gospels, because the New Testament came, even the most conservative Christian apologists would say the New Testament came after Jesus. People wrote down the New Testament. Yeah. It just didn't fall out of the sky or whatever. Same thing with the Old Testament. Same thing with the Torah. It was the Torah revealed to Moses. It wasn't written about Moses. Same thing with the Injil or the Gospel. It was Injil. It was a Gospel revealed to Jesus, not written about him.
Okay.
So Islam kind of has a different view on the Bible than like, it's not like the